Welcome to All Things Policy, a daily podcast supported by Pragati, a flagship media initiative of the Takshashila Institution. We're a bunch of policy nerds based in Bengaluru, and we like to bring a fresh perspective to Indian affairs and an Indian perspective to global affairs. So grab a cup of coffee, sit back, and join us for today's chat.
Hi everyone, welcome to a new episode of All Things Policy. I'm Anu, and with me I have my colleague Sudisha. We work at the 20 Million Jobs Project, as you may know, and we have a very, very exciting guest with us today. Welcome to the podcast, Tulshe.
Thank you so much, Anu, and look forward to speaking with you folks.
Awesome. Maybe before we get started, I'll quickly introduce Tulshe to everyone. Tulshe actually has an academic background in economics and a decade of experience in designing, implementing, and monitoring social impact strategies. She's always been passionate about solving the most important and urgent social problems and is a co-founder at Zero to Positive, which is empowering businesses and communities to achieve their sustainability goals. So Tulshe is our sustainability expert today who's going to talk to us all about the green economy, how do jobs flourish in the green economy, and what happens next. Very, very excited for this, and let's just dive right in. Maybe if you're okay with that, why don't you tell us about what is the green economy even, and what does this mean in the context of India?
Awesome. Thanks for that warm introduction, Anu. I don't know about being a sustainability expert, but definitely a very keen learner there. So to begin with, green economy really is not a new concept. It's been around for decades. However, I think we are only talking about the green economy and realizing the importance and the need to be resilient to withstand shocks after we have truly undergone this raging pandemic, Now, all of a sudden, countries are waking up to the fact that we need to build better systems. We need to be more resilient, right? In other aspect, we are also realizing that sustainability today is not enough. We have overutilized our resources. We have depleted our natural resources, let alone leaving anything behind for the future generation, right? Also, speaking about sustainable development now, because this is becoming too passé a concept, because there are no more resources to be utilized and to be left for the future generations, we are also realizing that, the way we have run our systems in a more extractive manner is actually becoming more redundant, right? And that's where I would like to bring in the concept of regenerative sustainability, right? Regenerative sustainability is a design principle that truly appreciates the interconnectedness of human and environmental well-being, right? It aims to balance or strike that balance between economic growth, environmental growth, and social well-being, right? So by definition, then green economy as a concept, it focuses on reduction of environmental risks. It focuses on improvement of your ecological well-being, and all of this while taking into account the importance that we place on the current and future generations, right? Which also takes into account the social equity, the inclusion aspect, right? Yeah, and I think in the context of India, truly historically and even mythologically, we have been respectful of nature. We have had our traditions of worshipping trees. We have had our traditions of expressing our gratitude, towards rivers, towards forests. And also, if we look at our indigenous groups as well, if you look at the knowledge that they behold, that truly speak to circular economy, right? Now, all of this in current days, India, we are definitely one of the most populated, or we are going to be the most populated in the world, which means that there's going to be so much pressure on the land, on the systems, on water, and everything else, right? Now, with rising population, we know what happens. With rising population, there's greater demand on goods and services. There is greater demand on the land use itself, right? So the point is, the way we have been functioning in an extractive manner, it cannot continue in that fashion again, right? We are heavily at a risk of deepening our poverty, right? Given the fact that we are seventh most vulnerable in the world with regards to climate risks. All of us have been seeing or have been privy to all the weather events of cyclones, of heat waves, of flooding, and all of this while trying to be a $5 trillion economy. Right. So what does green economy truly mean? I think anything that works towards the improvement of the environment falls under the overarching umbrella of green economy, And I think also just the very fact that we are aiming we have set our really ambitious targets of net zero, of our commitments of expansions of renewables, promotions of electric vehicles, 30% of the vehicles on the roads need to be EVs, by 2030. But the question truly is that who's going to do it? How will we do it? And how do we do it at scale? And the most important one is how do we do it quickly, right? Because climate change is a time-bound problem. We cannot make commitments now and say that, we will actually take it gradually. It has to happen now. So how do we make this transition quick and fast and efficient? So yeah, all in all, I would say that's my understanding of green economy.
Thanks, Tulshe. I think some. Go ahead, Sudisha.
Yeah, I think the next question that we want to ask is that according to the World Economic Forum, India has the potential to generate 50 million green jobs and add 15 trillion US dollars of economic opportunity by 2070, ahead of achieving its net zero target. So, what constitutes a green job? And as we transition to low carbon future, can we consider every job to be possibly a green job?
Yeah, I could take the first one in terms of what constitutes a green job, and the second one of what if all jobs can be green today. The straight of answer is actually yes, and we will dive deeper into that. So coming to what are green jobs, so ILO defines green jobs as decent jobs that work towards the preservation and restoration of the environment. Keyword here is decent, right? We have to understand that decent is an important keyword that focuses on fair, on equitable, on just systems. We have to take into account the workers, the workplace protection, the social protection, fair income, equal treatment, right? For example, today, the labor force working in biofuel plantation could be undergoing an exploitation. Now, whereas that is green, but it is not decent, Today, people could be working in electronics recycling without adequate safety, right? So that is green job, but that is not decent. So therefore, any decent job that works for preservation and restoration of the environment constitutes a green job. And the spectrum of this can look very wide. It constitutes improving energy material efficiency. It can look at any job that looks at limiting greenhouse gas emissions, any job that looks at minimization of waste, of pollution, protection and restoration of rivers, of forests, production of green goods. Eco-friendly products are becoming, extremely fashionable and also a lifestyle choices now. So a production of that constitutes green jobs. And also speaking to the services that look at adaptation of climate change, right? These are also constituents of green job. Now, I would like to bring in here how South Africa and US actually describe their green jobs. And we find it very interesting because they talk about shades of green, right? So there are core green jobs that look at where your production process, where your product in itself and the purpose, all of that is green, right? For example, a chief sustainability officer, a recyclist, ESG manager, or a simple solar technician, hydro technician. These are core green jobs where the purpose, the production, and the product in itself, all of that is green. The second shade of green talks about the specialization in your existing jobs, right? Now, these will be where, let's say, a lawyer who specializes in environmental lawyer, your auditors who are now energy auditors, right? Now, these specialties are emerging because of green trends. Today, a construction manager has to probably understand and learn about what green construction is, has to understand what retrofitting of, the old residential or commercial buildings look like, right? So this is where they're getting specialized into their existing jobs. And the third kind would be the traditional jobs, sometimes not regarded as green, but the overall process contributes to the green economy. Let's say, for example, bus drivers who are going to be now driving EV vehicles. Now that's a green job, right? So this is, in some sense, the shades of green that we talk about. And coming to the second question that you asked, Sudisha, in terms of can every job be green? The answer is actually yes, right? Because it is a mindset. It is a mindset that can be applied into our roles, into the organizations that we work in. If we really just look at waste, water, energy, material efficiency, right? Today, when I am walking out of the room, am I switching off my fans? If I were taking 12 flights a year or 10 flights a year, have I started actively sort of making an attempt to reduce the number of flights that I'm taking, right? So any job role where we are applying a green lens does also have a significant impact and can contribute to the overarching terminology of a green job.
I've taken so many notes while you were speaking. So I love shades of green. And also the fact that you alluded to, at our core as a culture, we've always been nature worshippers or had a deep connection to nature. And it seems like now we're at the stage, exactly you said, where it may be too late, right? The action has to be taken now and going back to our roots in a certain sense. On your last question, on the last answer that you gave, right? If every job could be a green job, that's actually amazing, of course. And that's the situation that we'd like to be in. But I did also want to get your sentiments on this idea of greenwashing, especially as the political discourse moves more towards action that is being taken for climate change. Even though a lot is pledged, often not a lot is done. It seems the narrative right now is everyone wants to position themselves as someone who's taking audacious goals as well. So if every job could be considered a green job, is there a chance of greenwashing? And do you think we should have better standards or some standards on what constitutes a green job today so that we can hold governments accountable?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, honestly, in my opinion, again, could be a controversial one, but I believe that greenwashing is not just happening intentionally because, people want to attain a certain level of reputation, certain level of brand credibility, so on and so forth. But it also happens due to lack of knowledge. Right? Today, we do not have a vocabulary. We do not have SOPs that guide you what, green strategies look like, what green implementation looks like, what green processes look like. So people are really shooting in the dark and trying to see whether this is green or not. And sometimes they're being called out for the fact that that's not green. But hey, who knows enough to come and tell you that, this is how greening works, right? So in terms of setting standards and defining the scope of green jobs, sure, at the end of the day, we will have to do that. But as of now, we just need to appreciate the fact that with the limited understanding that we have, people with the intention of climate action are actually trying their level best to do climate action. Now the science has not been converted into a layperson language yet, unfortunately. When I'm from Orissa and when I go back to Orissa and I'm trying to talk to many people, they're like, okay, we understand the weather is changing, but tell me more. I can't find the right vocabulary to talk to them about it. Because English, unfortunately, is the only language that I can communicate climate in, right? So when I am meeting, let's say, restaurant owners, or I'm meeting people who are in the raw material processing units and trying to talk to them in a language that they understand is also becoming very difficult, right? So I think this is, again, it is a language problem. It is a problem of the fact that we don't know enough, and therefore we haven't been able to define what is the scope and what is outside the scope.
I mean, that's a paradox and it's something we're going to have to deal with, right? We don't know enough, but we're still going to have to do something about it today. On that note, let's take a very quick break. And then when we come back, we're going to talk to you about what the green jobs landscape looks like in India and how do we do more of it, really. So we'll be right back. And we're back. Thank you for this very riveting chat, to be honest, Tulshe. I think we were talking a little bit about green jobs and the lack of a language that exists when it comes to green jobs, right? We've been talking within this project quite a bit about where green jobs may come from. And as you said, there is not a lot of layman literature that one can access maybe. But from what we've read, we understand that sectors like transport, solar and construction, in India at least, are expected to be leaders in the space of green jobs. And we also find that they tend to be, something you alluded to, more equitable in nature as well, right? Approximately 13% of jobs created through green energy are actually within rural towns and centers, and therefore creating more job opportunities as well. What we'd love for you to talk to our listeners about is what trends are you actually noticing in the space and outside of the sectors that we've spoken about, which is transport, solar and construction. There are other trends that we should be looking out for or other areas of interest where you think there could be a potential for more job creation.
Got it. Yeah, thanks for that question. Again, I believe that across the value chain, across labor segments, across skill types, we are all going to undergo a green revolution, right? Mechanics today have to be familiar with EV cars. There's going to be different machine operators that's going to be required. Service engineers with different skill sets who are going to be required. All of a sudden, the sales personnel who is selling fossil fuel run vehicles is going to be selling EVs, right? So all of this will require awareness, knowledge, different set of skill set and mindset. And I will talk about mindset in a bit. But all of this has to be built. So our current and future labor force has to be skilled and upskilled to meet these demands, right? And again, this will happen across the value chain. Today, businesses are being asked to look at ESG, but where are the trained people to do it? EVs need to be on the road, but what kind of skills and training is required for the manufacturer, for the factory manager, for the labor force themselves, all right? To probably answer the question of where are the green jobs at, I think the answer truly lies in just understanding which are the most greenhouse gas emitting industries, right? So the answer lies there. The job creation and deployment of labor is actually going to be in those industries that are the most greenhouse gas emitting industries. We are chasing ambitious targets of renewables, and ILO suggests that, we will need about 50 lakhs jobs in renewables by 2030. Green construction, so real estate and construction industry is going to be under tremendous pressure for greening the buildings, right? Retrofitting of old buildings, using green knowledge and technology for the new ones has the potential to create about 1.2 crore jobs in the near future, right? Things like solid waste management. Now, a lot of public policy work is happening around fecal sludge management, maintenance and operations of septic tanks. And if we just look at the deployment of sanitation workforce on the ground, again, the demand is huge there, right? Mobility is a space that the government is investing heavily in. I recently read a report that suggested that literally $700 million have been deployed in the allocation of EV startups. Now, who is going to do it, right? Who are the people? Just, from a managerial level down to the factories, everybody is undergoing this change, and that presents so many opportunities across the value chain, right? Talking about probably the key sectors besides the ones that you mentioned, renewables, we've definitely got our solar, wind, hydro, biofuel, biomass. With sustainable cities, now cities are incredibly important as a unit. So sustainable cities will include green buildings, green construction. It will include green transportation, which is where the EVs and mobility is what we're talking about. And also preservation of the environment, of the forests, right? Which is where we talk about solid waste management, water management, e-waste management, carbon sinks. So these are certain prominent sectors that have the full potential of generating more and more jobs. And the data that you mentioned is actually come through all these sectors. But I think the point that I want to drive home is that we have to look at within each city, what are the most greenhouse gas emitting industries, and understand that those industries are going to undergo their decarbonization journey. And in that transition period is where they're going to be generating a lot more jobs.
Yeah, so on that note, you said that, of course, there are a lot of people who would be working in these industries, which points towards a set of skills, right, that we will require these people to have. And we talked about this in our budget podcast, that the skill was the buzzword in this budget. The government is heavily investing in skill development. So can you tell us about how do we work towards bridging the skill development gap when it comes to green jobs, and how can we successfully do that?
Fantastic. Thanks for that question again, Sudisha. So a couple of things here. Firstly, through our interaction with various stakeholders across businesses, nonprofits, government agencies, we quickly realized that any entity today can build their green strategy, although that in itself is a push and more often due to external factors. But what is really important is the implementation of the strategy, right? And the key to that is having the right kind of mindset. What we do at Zero to Positive is we take our stakeholders on a journey of awareness, intent, and action, where we work on building awareness around climate change, supporting their intent by showing them what are the pathways, and enabling them to act by giving them the right set of tools, right? So therefore, sustainability mindset actually becomes the fundamentals to any action, where the goal is to not just develop an understanding of the science behind what is really happening around, but enabling and empowering them with the capabilities to drive action in their surrounding, right? Now, what sustainability mindset, we are very, very inspired. Smithsonian Institute talks about sustainability mindset, and they've been researching about sustainability mindset for close to a decade now. And they talk about how sustainability mindset blends practices of being able to examine issues through multiple lenses. We talk about systems thinking in the context of climate action because it is truly important. It is not a siloed process, right? So for us to be able to examine our issues through multiple lenses of social, economic, environment, ethical, understanding our own values and perspectives and reflecting on how that is affecting or impacting the world around us, focusing on social emotional learning, right? Self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, all of this becomes critical. And due to the interconnectedness of environmental and human beings, awareness and knowledge around human rights and sustainable development are also integral. So in some sense, what I'm saying is sustainability mindset becomes important because once we have this lens imbibed in us, we are then able to apply to any context at an individual level, at a household level, at a community level, at an organizational level within our role, and so on and so forth. So in terms of skill sets, besides, of course, we know the technical stuff is going to be there around, how do you install solar, how do you maintain, your hydropower plants, how do you go about carbon accounting, and so on and so forth. But besides all these technical things, environmental awareness, problem solving, communication and knowledge sharing, collaboration, analytical thinking, innovation, systems thinking, competency of resilience, all of this becomes important. And talking about, I think, in terms of skill development, this presents such a huge opportunity to our vocational training institutes and our ITIs who can actually integrate all of these skills into the curriculum because this is so very much tied and has a clear overlap with the 21st century skills that we are talking about, right? So when we are talking about, making the future workforce ready for the green economy, it is very important to understand that sustainability mindset is a clear function of the 21st century skills.
Yeah. I love the holistic way in which you talked about skill building as well, right? It takes a little bit more than just the technical knowledge, which is where I think sometimes we tend to default. What I'd love to do is actually go back to a question that we had previously in terms of sectors and bring all of this together, right? When speaking about sectors that would be impacted by green jobs or could have potential for green jobs and skills, something that comes to mind is, of course, agriculture, right? Over 41% of our workforce is involved, less than 15% of GDP contribution. Everyone knows those stats. But I think something that we've been reading about is also the impact of climate change on agriculture is urgent. It needs urgent action. And we also have an opportunity to really pivot in terms of skill building there as well. So I'd love for you to talk to us a little bit about the opportunities that you see in agriculture and the actions that we need to take today from bringing a second green revolution, if you will.
Yeah. I think, honestly, agriculture is such a vast topic. It is a separate discussion in itself, right? But generally speaking, agriculture and land use are one of the biggest contributors to greenhouse gases. And therefore, having a low carbon food system becomes extremely critical, right? We have transitioned from natural inputs to really chemical intensive inputs, and that has resulted in the depletion of our soil health. And not just that, look at the kind of food that we're consuming. It is definitely impacting the nutrition value that, we are taking into our systems, right? So while sustainable consumption is picking up, the people on the ground are still struggling to make it an economically viable livelihood, right? I think the missing pieces, one of the biggest ones is the learning and awareness and information around sustainable techniques. Today, they are also under tremendous pressure of giving good and consistent quality yield, right? And while also navigating through erratic rainfall, through your spells of drought and, your water facilities, right? And doing agriculture, let's accept it, it's not been an attractive opportunity. Farming is not sexy, and as long as that narrative does not change, we will truly be at a loss of opportunities that it presents. But in terms of opportunities, definitely organic farming, right? Organic food market in India is growing, and there is a huge demand for organic produce, both in our domestic setting and in the global setting. Agroforestry is another one, which is such a big opportunity. Agroforestry in general, probably for the audience, is integrating trees with crops, right? And this can truly help the small farmers generate additional income. Crop diversification is another huge opportunity because we can cultivate multiple crops in a given area, and this not only improves our soil health, it reduces pest attacks, but all in all, we just have to understand that this also has a direct correlation in providing better food security. While we talk about crop and agriculture, livestock also becomes important. We are one of the largest producers of milk. We have a large livestock population. So sustainable livestock management that speak to, providing proper food, feed, shelter, healthcare, all of this, contributes towards the productivity, towards the reduction of greenhouse gases. So I think in conclusion, I would say that, there are several opportunities in sustainable agriculture. The adoption of these practices definitely can help the farmers with better crop yields, can conserve our natural resources, can generate additional income. The farmer-producer organizations therefore play a very critical role where they can help the farmers access these markets, access the credit, access the technology, the know-how, etc. So whereas, all these are the opportunities, they have to be tied together, and we have to understand that the people who are working on the ground, it should reach to them. Whatever it takes to strengthen these institutions from the state level to the districts to the block level to the down to the panchayat level, however, we will be able to interact with the farmers and get this knowledge across, along with providing them with the real inputs as well. Chemical inputs are not making the cut. They won't make the cut in the long run. It's what kind of inputs are we also providing there. Now, in women empowerment is also extremely important. When we think of a farmer, we are always thinking of a man. But hello, the women contribute to, I think 84% of the farmers are actually women, right? So what does it take to engage with the self-help groups who are actually, the farmer organizations in themselves, right? So we have to really broaden our understanding of agriculture and the population that works on agriculture there.
Yeah, that actually brings us to almost the end of the podcast. So I have one final question, which is where should India look for inspiration when it comes to job creation and green economy? And also, if you can talk a little bit about the role digitization plays in this. Honestly, personally, I'm a little concerned about that because I see a lot of apps and all being released, but on the ground, they don't really work. Manrega is a great example, right? I talk about that scheme a lot because I started researching about it and now it just pops up in my newsfeed. And now the government is bringing more technology into the scheme, but it's not really working on the ground, right? Workers are still struggling to get their payments or get their attendance marked. So it would be great if you can talk a little bit about that. Digitization plays ensuring that we transition towards a green economy.
Awesome. I think to address the first question in terms of inspiration, honestly, there are many countries that are making significant investments in renewables, in energy efficiency, sustainable transportation. All of this is generating green jobs. We know that Germany is a leader in renewables, right, which is a strong focus on wind and solar, and they have been able to create a very thriving ecosystem, a green entrepreneurship ecosystem in that direction. US has been successful in creating jobs in solar, wind, and is again making significant investments in sustainable transportation. China, of course, is the world leader in solar and has been, creating many jobs in the solar industry. I think what we need to understand is that these countries are not just making the investments, but are also complementing by greening the technical and vocational educational institutes, which harbors the future workers, right? Germany has a wide range of green trades, speaking to renewables, speaking to green construction, speaking to waste management. Finland has introduced their green trades in agroforestry, in ecotourism. China, US, Canada, Australia, South Africa have all been successful in introducing green trades into the technical and vocational educational institutes. But it also means that they are also looking at what is an institutional green culture, right? It is not just about introducing the green trades, but also saying that how can we build this mindset across the facilitators, the trainers, the principals of these educational institutes. What does a green aspirational infrastructure of an ITI or a vocational training institute look like? So all of them have been able to do this really well. So I think the point that I'm trying to make here again is that whereas all these big countries are making significant investments across renewables and mobility and transportation and things like that, they're also complementing that by training the educational institutes that actually houses the future workforce there. Yeah, so I believe there is a lot of good work happening and a lot of spaces where we can draw our inspiration from. However, I think the key to sustainability is actually in contextualization, because today, if we take Silicon Valley, for example, what works in Silicon Valley in the US, if we just, control C, control V it here, it's not gonna work, right? So therefore, truly understanding the context and applying that inspiration in a more customized manner that takes into account people's needs, that takes into account our terrains, our understanding, our vulnerabilities, very, very important. Coming to the second question of digitization, so very interestingly, I was on the field last week, and the big problem there was when I was meeting the farmers there, they were talking about how digital payments is nice. It means that they don't have to go to the bank, but it also means that when their 15-year-old son is unavailable, they cannot get access. Right? So today, when we are talking about digitization, I have always also been talking about digital literacy, but again, digital literacy for who? In what language? How are we making it accessible? Today, definitely in terms of smartphones, etc., we've made it affordable to a certain degree. However, how is this language becoming accessible? Who is getting trained in using this language, right? And I think if we are probably able to make the language a lot simpler, make the language a lot more inclusive, I think there is definitely a lot more potential for us in the green economy and the correlation there with the digital India piece. So, yeah.
Wow. I could keep going, to be very honest, but I think my biggest takeaway from all of this has been not just holistic thinking, but how do you include everybody on this journey, right? Changing mindsets is just as important as creating green jobs. And I honestly think there should be a whole other podcast on the language of sustainability. And maybe we'll take you up on that, Tulshe. But for now, we're unfortunately going to have to wrap this up. This has been a really enjoyable conversation. Thank you for taking the time, Tulshe. And thank you, Sudisha, as always. We hope our listeners have also really enjoyed it. And we'll see you soon.
Thank you so much, Anu and Sudisha. This was awesome.
Thank you.
If you liked our show, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can tune into them on the IVM Podcast app, ivmpodcast.com, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can also follow IVM on social media. The handle is @IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And hey, if you'd like to dive into Takshashila's research on technology, strategy, and economic affairs, check us out at our Twitter handle @Takshashila INST or our website takshashila.org.in.